Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Wellness Institute's Nutrition for the Young at Heart, Eating Well for Active Aging. As you can see on our slide that you're looking at right now, this webinar is part of our Active Aging series, Redefining Active. So we'd just like to give a special thanks to our sponsor of our series, which is River Ridge 1 and 2. My name is Karen Whalen, and I'm going to be your host of today's webinar. And today's webinar is going to be facilitated by our very own Laura Creek Newman. She's a dietitian, a registered dietitian here at the Wellness Institute. She has loads of experience, over 10 years of experience, working in a wide variety of different settings. She believes that food is something that is not only nourishing for ourselves, but is meant to be thoroughly enjoyed too. She's passionate about good nutrition and empowering her clients and others to help reach their goals. And so there's a picture. You can see Laura, who will be speaking to you in just a moment. Just like to give you a little bit of background about the Wellness Institute. We are going to be celebrating our 23rd anniversary in a couple weeks. We were established in 1996, so we've been around for a while now. We are not for profit. We're a certified medical fitness facility in Winnipeg. So we offer a plethora of different services, and really our overall goal is to help people prevent illness or perhaps improve their quality of life and enhance their own personal health outcomes. During this webinar that you're participating in, if you have any questions at any time, please put them in the chat box that you have in front on your screen and any time during the presentation, and we'll be happy to address them at the end. We'd like to do it this way just to help keep with the flow of the webinar. So I'd now like to turn things over to Laura, who will begin your webinar right now. Here's Laura.
Great, thank you, Karen. All right, so today we are going to talk about a whole bunch of things relating to nutrition through active aging. So first, we're going to do a bit of a review of nutrition needs for the older adult, and we're going to discuss the importance of eating well, not just for physical health, but also for mental and emotional health. And then we'll do a little bit of nutrition myth busting. So we'll put on our critical thinking caps there. So let's get started, and we're going to talk first about the nutrient needs for the young at heart. So we want to start off with a good foundation, and of course, active aging is built on a strong body, and the thing that holds up that strong body is our bones. So keeping our bones nice and strong and working well is a huge part of aging well and being active. Two main nutrients that are highly involved in healthy bones are vitamin D and calcium. So calcium is a mineral, and that makes up the building block of our bones. If you want to think of it kind of like the bricks in a wall, it provides the structure to our bones. It makes them really hard and tough and supports our body weight. Calcium also plays other roles in our body. So it's important for heart health and muscle contraction, including our heart muscle, and it's involved in other chemical processes. So we definitely need calcium for all sorts of body functions, but 98% of the calcium in our body is in our bones. Vitamin D is also really important in keeping our bones healthy. It plays a lot of different roles throughout the body, but its biggest role is allowing our body to absorb the calcium from our food and put it into our bones. So if you want to think of calcium like the bricks in a wall, vitamin D is like that brick layer. It helps make sure that those bricks get into that skeleton to make it nice and strong and tough. Now, we often think of bone as this static solid thing that never changes, but it's actually changing all the time. Our bones are always remodeling, changing, so repairing any damages and repairing themselves over time. And so this is normal for a bone to change. What we know, though, is as we age, our bones tend to lose more calcium and strength than they build back in. So because of this, we need more calcium as we get older in order to help compensate for this extra calcium loss from our bones. We also need more vitamin D as we get older. Our body's just not as good at making it or using it. So we need more vitamin D to help that calcium to get into our bones, to keep our bones as healthy as possible. Calcium comes from a lot of different food sources, dairy being one of the biggest ones, but a few other ones, which I'll talk about in a minute. As we get older, for a lot of people, those food sources aren't as plentiful in their diet. So we need more calcium, but we tend not to be eating as much of it. And that can cause a problem for keeping strong bones. Vitamin D especially is something that can be hard to get from diet alone. So our bodies do make some vitamin D. For about 6 months of the year, from about May until October or so, our bodies can make vitamin D by exposing our skin to sunlight. But for the other 6 months of the year, we can't make enough vitamin D from that way. As for our food supply, there's not a whole lot of vitamin D in this food supply. Some of our fatty fish, like salmon, are good sources of vitamin D, but most Canadians aren't eating a lot of fish on a regular basis. Foods like milks and plant-based milks and margarine are fortified with vitamin D, but it does tend to be in small amounts. And again, as we get older, those foods tend not to make up as much of our diet. So it can be hard to get enough vitamin D and calcium through our foods alone as we age. So these two nutrients are things we do really want to focus on. Like I mentioned, one of the best known sources of calcium is our dairy products. Milk, cheese, yogurt, kefir, these are all excellent sources of highly available calcium. But there's lots of calcium sources that are not dairy based. So if you don't eat dairy or you can't eat dairy, you still have ways to get calcium in your diet. If you're looking at eating more fish, eating fish with bones in it, so things like canned salmon or sardines, that's a really good source of calcium as well. There's also a lot of plant-based sources of calcium. So our dark leafy greens, particularly from the broccoli family. So things like kale, bok choy, collard greens, these are great sources of calcium. Some of our nuts and seeds, like almonds and sesame seeds and sesame seed paste, are also really good sources of calcium. So we do want to try to aim for 3 to 4 servings of high calcium foods every day. We can do dairy or not, but we want to have a combination of different foods and have that regularly. As for vitamin D, it's great to get vitamin D through our food. Like I mentioned, both dairy milk and most plant-based milks are fortified with vitamin D, as well as that margarine, and then our fatty fish. For adults over 70 though, the recommendation for vitamin D does go up, and getting enough vitamin D through a supplement can be one of the easiest and most effective ways to do it for most people. So it can be okay to add that supplement in. I will note, and you'll hear me say this over and over again, that anytime you're thinking about starting a supplement of any kind, make sure you're consulting with a health professional, a dietitian like myself, your pharmacist, and your family practitioner. Another really important nutrient for strong bones is magnesium. So magnesium plays a role in helping that calcium build that strong skeleton. And we also use magnesium to maintain healthy blood pressure and keep our muscles nice and healthy. So just like calcium, it has a few different roles in the body. Now, magnesium mostly comes from plant foods. So you can see on the screen there a variety of different fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes. Basically, any type of whole, unprocessed plant food is a pretty good source of magnesium. That being said, a lot of Canadians are not getting enough magnesium. And part of this is because we're not eating enough fruits and vegetables. Only about 30% of Canadians are getting at least their 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So that means we're having fewer opportunities to get enough magnesium. So for these healthy bones, we do want to include a wide variety of plant-based foods. The less processed, the better, because they have more magnesium in them. The more fruits, vegetables, and especially our nuts, seeds, and legumes. These are some of our best sources of magnesium to really help keep that skeleton nice and strong. So once we have our strong bones, then we start thinking about our strong muscles. That's what powers us to do all of the activities that we love to do and keep us active there. If we think about calcium as the building block of strong bones, well, then we can think of the nutrient protein as the building block of strong muscles. So our muscles are made of proteins, and we need enough protein in our diet in order to support these strong muscles. But protein also is the building block for pretty much every other body tissue. Our organs, our skin, our hair, our nails, everything is made of protein. Now, when we think of needing enough protein, we might be thinking of kids growing and they're growing up, so they need extra protein in their diet. But even if we're not growing up, so to speak, our bodies are still always healing, repairing, rebuilding things to keep us as strong as we can be. And we need enough protein in our diet to support that. Getting enough protein to support these strong muscles and this healing will help to keep our bones nice and strong, which can help to prevent things like falls in the future. Why do we worry about falls? Well, the thing is, especially if we're not getting enough calcium and vitamin D, we have that higher osteoporosis risk later. If we have a fall and we have osteoporosis, we're much more likely to break a bone. And in that case, that can dramatically change our quality of life, our physical ability, and our ability to be active through our lives. So strong muscles, by getting enough protein, can help to protect those bones and prevent those falls for us. Protein comes from a variety of foods. We might often think of those those animal-based foods, things like meat, fish, poultry as our best sources of protein, and they certainly are, but they're not the only ones. Eggs, dairy, these are great sources of protein as well. Then we also want to look to the plant kingdom. Beans, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, soy products, these are all great sources of plant-based proteins. And there's a lot of good evidence to show that including plant-based proteins in our diet regularly can help to maintain cardiovascular health, healthy blood pressure, things like that. When it comes to foods, or when it comes to getting enough protein, we want to try to aim for having a good source of protein at every meal. We're more likely to get enough protein to fuel that muscle rebuilding and good, strong bones and strength if we do that way. And we also want to focus on getting our protein from whole foods as much as we can. Because when we eat the food, not only do we get the protein, but we also get any other nutrients that come with it. For example, if we eat some cheese, we not only get the protein, but we get some B vitamins and we get the calcium to go along with it to support those strong bones. So in general, we do want to focus on a food-first approach, and protein is no exception to that. So high protein foods regularly at each meal if possible. Iron and zinc are two minerals that really will support the work of those strong muscles that we're building with all that protein. Iron, we might think of that related to energy levels or maybe our red blood cells. So we need enough iron in our diets in order to have our red blood cells work properly. Our red blood cells will carry oxygen around the body, which gives the body energy. If we don't have enough iron, we can't get that oxygen, and our body is not going to have the energy to be active. So we're likely to feel tired, weak. We have poor immunity and poor healing as well. Especially when we have some fitness goals, getting enough iron in our diet is important for that active aging and building those fitness goals. Zinc is a nutrient that's involved in a lot of different body processes, but one of the biggest things that it's needed for is in body tissue healing and repair. So anytime we're sick or we get an injury, we're going to need zinc to help out with that healing. So having enough zinc in our bodies regularly is going to make us heal faster and better. Both iron and zinc are available in a variety of different plant and animal foods. For iron, we tend to think of things like red meats or darker colored meats as really good sources of iron. Egg yolks can be another one for that, fish, of course, as well. And then for the plant-based sources of iron, our legumes are some of our superstars there. So our beans, lentils, and chickpeas, and then some of our seeds too, like pumpkin seeds are an excellent source of iron. As for zinc, it's found in a lot of the same foods as iron is, so that's kind of a 2-for-1 when it comes to nutrition. We also find zinc in a fairly wide variety of whole grains and as well in some dairy foods as to round that out. So when it comes to these two nutrients, having a varied diet, eating a wide variety of plant and animal foods is likely to help us get enough iron and zinc. Now, if you're concerned, you're thinking maybe I'm not getting enough of one of these nutrients, I'd really recommend working one-on-one with a dietitian to help you figure out, am I getting enough and how could I get more? Our last nutrient that I'm going to talk about for our strong muscles is vitamin B12. So similar to iron, we need vitamin B12 in order for our red blood cells to work properly, to bring the oxygen and energy around our bodies. Vitamin B12 is also really important in keeping our nerves healthy. So we need those nerves to be working properly in order for our muscles to be working properly. Finally, we also use vitamin B12 in getting energy out of our food and metabolizing fats to get energy. So it plays a lot of important roles in the body. Now, as we get older, our body's ability to absorb vitamin B12 from our food goes down. This is unfortunately one of those natural processes. So we all tend to need a little bit more as we get older. There are also some chronic conditions or medications that can interfere with vitamin B12 absorption, which again can mean that we need more than the average person. Vitamin B12 only comes from animal foods naturally, so it's not naturally found in plant foods, but there are a few fortified plant foods out there. So if you're looking at trying to get enough vitamin B12, if you consume animal foods, having those on a regular basis, particularly some of those protein-heavy animal foods, is likely to get you most or all of your vitamin B12. Now, if you have some of those other chronic conditions or you're taking some of those medications, a supplement might be needed in addition to a diet that has enough B12 in it. If you don't eat any animal foods, then you really do need to take a supplement. Even though there are some fortified plant foods, they usually won't provide enough alone. So you'd probably want to look at taking a supplement. Again, talk to your primary care provider about that. So we have strong bones, we have strong muscles. Now to support the work of those strong bones and strong muscles, we need strong body systems. And there's a few nutrients that can help out with different body systems. One of the most important body systems when it comes to nutrition is the gut or the gastrointestinal system. We're finding more and more that the health of the gastrointestinal system is really important in the overall health of the person, and not just the health, but the well-being as well. When it comes to keeping the gut healthy, fiber is one of the best things that we can give our guts. So fiber is something that we often associate with just our bowel habits, keeping everything moving. But we're finding that fiber plays many more roles in overall health, wellness, and vitality than we thought. So not only does it keep the gut moving properly, which helps to keep it healthy, but it helps to keep our blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol in healthy ranges. And that's going to support that healthy, active aging for us. It's also going to help us feel good when we go to exercise and be active. Fiber only comes from plant foods. So we have some nutrients like B12 that only come from animal foods, and then we have some like fiber that only come from plant foods. So again, kind of like magnesium, the more plants we eat, the more fiber we're going to get. Unfortunately, our typical Canadian diet isn't super high in fiber. So Canadians are only getting about half of the recommended amount of fiber they need every day. So if we're not eating a lot of plant foods, or if we're eating a lot of processed foods, and that's where they take the fiber out of foods, we tend not to hit that target. So we're not getting those health benefits of enough fiber. So what can we do? Get back to eating more plants and more less processed plants. So I like to say eating things as close to the way they came off the plant as possible means that you're going to get as much fiber as possible. And luckily, fiber is present in pretty much all plant foods. So our whole grains are some of our best sources. So that would be things like whole wheat, oats, barley, buckwheat, quinoa, wild rice. All of these things are great options for fiber. Our fruits and vegetables, of course, particularly if you can eat them with the peels on, that's excellent. And then our legumes are a really overlooked but excellent source of fiber, particularly the types of fiber that support healthy cholesterol levels. Foods that are more processed, like fruit juices or fruit snacks or refined white grain things, tend to be much lower in fiber. So we want to focus on the more whole food versions as often as we can. Now, one thing to note is that you can get enough fiber from foods that are fresh or frozen, cooked or raw. So you don't have to eat only raw, crunchy vegetables in order to get your fiber. You can get your fiber in a variety of cooking settings as long as you're eating those high fiber plant-based foods. Of course, another important system for healthy active aging is a healthy cardiovascular system. A healthy heart and healthy blood vessels are going to support all that activity you want to be doing. The type of things that we eat in our diet, particularly the types of fats that we eat, can support that healthy heart and blood vessel system. So the types of fats that we find are the most heart healthy are plant-based fats. Sometimes we call them unsaturated fats. So they would be things like your liquid cooking oils, canola oil and olive oil being some of the most common, but some of your other nut oil and seed oils like peanut oil, sesame oil, avocado oil. These are all those heart healthy fats there. So we want to make those the basis of our fats in our diet there. There's a particular type of heart healthy fat called omega-3 fat that we've found really does support those healthy blood vessels and just lower inflammation overall in the body. This, again, can be found in a variety of plant-based foods, especially things like canola and flaxseed, but it can also be found in some of our fatty fish. So if you've heard that salmon is good for the heart, this is why, because it's really high in these heart-healthy omega-3 fats. So the best recommendation we have is to do a combination of heart-healthy plant-based fats and these fish-based omega-3 fats regularly. 2 servings a week of these fatty fishes like salmon, mackerel, char, sardines is going to get you the omega-3s that you need. And then using those healthy plant-based fats regularly is going to top you up and give you that overall heart-healthy fat profile. So it could be using your olive or canola oils for cooking, adding nuts and seeds to your salads or snack mixes, or even just putting some natural peanut or almond butter on your toast in the morning. These are all great ways to get those heart-healthy fats. And of course, we do have to mention good hydration. You've probably heard that our bodies are at least 70% water, so we need to make sure that we are getting enough water in every day for our bodies to work properly. Now, when it comes to hydration, it doesn't have to be just plain water. This is one of the biggest myths I hear all the time. Water, of course, is very hydrating, but milk can be a good source of fluid as well. Low sodium broth, herbal teas, coffee and tea, and other low sugar beverages. These are all good sources of hydration. So you don't need to think to yourself, oh, I have to drink all this water and I can't drink anything else. There's lots of different options for us there. A general rule of thumb is most adults need somewhere between 6 and 8 cups of low sugar fluid a day. Now, if you're sweating a lot, if it's really hot, or if you've been sick, you're probably going to need more than that. Some people may find that their sense of thirst changes as they get older, and that's kind of normal. So in that case, if that's true, making a habit of drinking, pairing your drinking with other activities. So bringing your water bottle with you when you go for a walk or when you go to the gym, or even just making sure that you set a glass on the table for your meals to remind you to eat. Those can be really helpful ways of making sure you get in your fluid every day. So we talked a lot about some different nutrients that are especially important for older adults. Eating well for active aging is about more than just the food. We want to look at all those factors around the food, the where, the how, the with whom of eating, because these can play big roles in our nutrition, our overall wellness, and how active we can stay. So a common challenge for a lot of people is making a transition to just cooking for 1 or 2 from cooking for a family, or for dealing with cooking on a budget there. And these are realistic challenges. When it comes to cooking smaller portions, it's hard. A lot of the recipes that are out there, or maybe some of the favorites that we always used to make, these are often made servings of 4 or more. So unless we love eating a lot of leftovers, a lot of people get really tired of this, and this can turn them off from cooking altogether. Not only that, but if we get turned off from cooking, we tend to turn to more processed foods, and we tend to miss out on a lot of nutrients or whole food groups altogether. Most commonly, we tend to miss out on protein foods because they take a little bit longer and a little bit more time to prepare. And some of our important minerals like calcium and iron and zinc, because we're not eating foods that are high in those. So luckily, there's a few strategies that we can put in place to help us eat well without feeling like we have to eat the same meal for the entire week. The first thing that we want to do is try to think simple. So for a lot of people, we have this idea that a balanced or nutritious meal is more complicated. It was cooked, it has several different dishes. And while that can be very healthy, that's not the only way to have a really balanced and nourishing meal. So meals can be cooked or they can be just not cooked at all. So something as simple as toast with some peanut butter, a banana, and a glass of milk or plant-based milk, that's a really balanced meal. Very simple to put together. Lots of nutrition in there. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with the idea of cooking, we can take a step back and think simple with that. We can also look at things that take some of the work out of it for us. So things like, especially when we're looking at protein, things like eggs, canned fish, pre-cooked chicken breasts, these are some fairly simple ways to get good nutritious protein sources in our diet. And they're often available in small portions as well. So again, we're not trying to deal with a lot of leftovers. We can also just think about alternatives to cooking all the time as well. So for some people, they might want to do some bulk meals, but they might want to share that cooking with somebody else they know. 2 people make a casserole, you split it, something like that. That can be a way of having different foods and not having to cook all these different meals there. Some people also just make a plan or a club to get together with their friends and everybody bring a dish, sort of potluck style, and then share the leftovers. So everybody has a few different tastes for a couple days. You can also take advantage of some services out there, some meal preparation and delivery services that can really help to bring those balanced meals to you. There's a variety of them out there now, and a lot of them are pretty nutritionally sound and can take some of that extra work and strain out of that eating well part of it. So we know that it's not just nutrition that can take a hit when we are adjusting to eating for one, or if we find ourselves eating alone a lot. It can be our emotional, physical, and cognitive wellness as well. So if you think back to the most enjoyable times spent with food, most people will think of times where they were in social gatherings. Maybe it was celebrations, maybe it was holidays, festivals, things like that. This is a shared aspect of food across the globe. Pretty much in every culture, food brings people together. We share it and we share that time together. Unfortunately, now a lot of people are dealing with eating alone. And we have some good evidence to show that eating together as a group can support that healthy, active aging, whereas eating alone tends to be a detriment to that. So what they've found is when they've done some studies of people living in retirement communities, the people who ate together, family-style meals, so they shared the same meal, they were at the same table, they were conversing, they had better overall nutrition intake. So they ate more foods, they ate more variety of foods, and they got all the nutrients they needed. Whereas people who were served the same food but ate separately, they had poorer nutrition than the people who joined the group. Not only that, but they found that people who regularly ate with other adults, they maintained their cognitive health a lot longer than people who regularly ate alone. So eating social meals really supports every aspect of wellness and healthy, active aging. If that's something that you're looking for, you can make your own social group or tap into ones that you have, like family and friends. There's also some congregate meal programs that run out of different community centers. So if you're looking for a group to join, there might be one near you. And that can be an easy way to have those more socially enjoyable meals there. All right, so we're going to move on to some nutrition myth busting related to staying healthy and active as we age. So something that you may have heard, and something I've certainly heard, is I can just take a multivitamin to get what I need. Well, multivitamins exist for a reason, and in some cases, they may help to fill some nutritional gaps. But by and large, what the research says is that people get better nutrition when they get those nutrients from foods versus from a pill. So our best evidence really shows that people who have a high quality diet, as much variety as possible, they really focus on all those nutrients I talked about earlier, they have better nutrient status overall than people who have low quality diets but who take multivitamins. So that's some food for thought for us. In some cases, adding certain supplements may be important or necessary. But for a lot of people, that healthy balanced diet is still that cornerstone. Now, if you're thinking of adding in a supplement, I would definitely recommend talking to your pharmacist and just making sure that it's not going to interact with anything else that you might be taking, and also working with a nutrition professional to help you figure out what might be the best course of action for you with your diet. Another myth I hear is that it's okay to eat if I'm not hungry. Well, as we get older, our energy needs do decrease. But as we've seen, a lot of our vitamin and mineral needs actually increase. So it's even more important that we make sure that we get those in. Appetite can go down as we get older, but we want to be mindful that that doesn't start leading to missed meals overall. Skipping meals not only gives us less opportunity to nourish our bodies and fuel our activities, but we're much less likely to get enough of those key nutrients, things like protein and calcium and vitamin D in our diet. So a good rule of thumb is aim for eating at least 3 times each day. If we're eating fewer times than that, it's hard to get enough food in to meet our nutrient needs. Not only that, fewer meals is linked with higher risk of malnutrition, which is linked to higher risk of falls and poor recovery and such. So maintaining at least that 3 times a day can be really helpful. Some people will find, well, I just can't eat that size of meal that I used to anymore. I'm just not hungry enough for that. And that's totally understandable and pretty common. In that case, it's okay to eat smaller amounts more frequently based on what you feel works best for you. Another good strategy is trying to focus on getting lots of energy and protein and nutrients in every bite of food. So really focusing on those nutrient-rich foods most often so you get the most bang for your bite with everything. If you're finding that your hunger is really, really decreased, you have no appetite at all, definitely bring that up with your primary care providers, because that's a warning sign that something's not going great for you. We kind of touched on this one already here, but it goes along with that myth of it's hard to cook for one, that balanced meals are complicated and expensive. Well, like I said earlier, a balanced meal can be as complicated or as simple as you want or need it to be. The building blocks of a really balanced meal are having a good protein food, plant or animal sourced, having some starchy foods for good energy to support our muscles. So that's things like grains, potatoes, rice, pasta, breads. These are all excellent starch choices, especially the high fiber ones. Getting a fruit or vegetable in there, that's our good source of fiber and lots of our vitamins and minerals. And then topping it off with some healthy fats, those plant-based unsaturated fats like avocado, nuts and seeds, olive oil. The more of your meals that have these 4 components, the more likely it is you're going to have healthy, active aging, and you're going to support your wellness long term. So when it comes to weight loss, we live in a world that's really focused on this, and it sends a blanket message to everybody that weight loss is always good. In reality, when it comes to older adults, weight loss can be a sign of poor health, that something's not going great. In fact, it can actually be healthier to maintain our weights or even have a slightly higher weight as we age, because it can be very protective if we do have an injury or an illness. People who are not losing weight tend to be able to recover faster with that. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the number on the scale if you do that. Particularly rapid fluctuations in weight one way or another, that can be an indicator that something's going on with health there. But weight isn't the only indicator. We want to focus on what's going into our bodies with our good nutrition and being as active as we can be, living as well as we possibly can to support our overall wellness. So a healthy diet is, of course, the cornerstone of good nutrition, but a healthy diet cannot replace medication. When it comes to particularly chronic disease management, the first thing that we often look at is making sure that we're getting that really healthy, balanced diet in there. That's always going to be the cornerstone of our health and our health management. However, in some cases, we may still need medications. Now, a healthy, balanced diet in addition to medication is likely to make that medication work better for us and to support that better overall wellness for us. If you're thinking about changing your medications or stopping your medications, always make sure you talk to your prescribing provider before you do that, though. And this is another common one. For a lot of people, we tend to, or the herb and nutritional supplement industry is a huge industry and it's very, very popular. And so it can be common to think that these are important and they're very useful in health. We want to be very cautious when we're using any of these types of products. And the reason for that is that they aren't set up for the same rigorous testing and quality control procedures as things like pharmaceuticals, for example. So the companies making these products don't have to comply with a lot of the same types of rules that give us that safety and peace of mind as with other types of things. So for example, when they do testing on what's in some of these supplements, from brand to brand, it will vary very drastically as to how much of the herb or supplement there actually is in that product. There have even been cases where they tested a product that said it was one herb and it actually turned out to be a totally different herb. So you want to be very careful because there's not a lot of guarantees telling us that what's on the label is actually what's in the bottle. A lot of these products will come with really strong claims about what they can do for us in terms of our health and wellness. But keep in mind that, again, because they're not treated the same as pharmaceuticals, they don't have to provide that same evidence base. So there isn't necessarily the science there to tell us, do they actually do what they're claiming to do? Some of these products can have efficacy, but again, there's just not enough science to say how or what. And some of these products have no science behind them at all, but that doesn't stop the companies from selling them. So be very critical when you see these big claims. Always keep in mind, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence there. Another thing to keep in mind too is that a lot of these products are often labeled as natural or sold as a natural kind of thing. And we have this idea that natural is always safe. In reality, natural things can be safe or they can be dangerous. It really just depends on the context. Some of these different herbs and supplements can have biological effects in the body, and sometimes they can cause things like drug interactions, or they can have certain effects based on certain health conditions. So just the fact that they're natural alone doesn't mean that they're necessarily safe or safe for all people. Other times too, we might find herbal supplements of things that we would normally use in our foods. Some of the most common ones right now are things like turmeric and garlic and ginger. You might see supplements of those on the shelves. While we know that the amount that we would typically use in cooking is quite healthy and safe, we don't actually know how those herbs affect us when we purify them and concentrate them and take them in very, very high doses. So just because something is safe to use as a cooking spice doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe or beneficial to use in a really high dose supplement. So if you choose to use these products, again, use your critical thinking cap. Think about what types of claims they're making on it and what type of evidence they're showing for those claims. And if you choose to include them, again, bring them to your pharmacist, maybe your family doctor. Make sure that they're not going to interact with any other medications or anything else that you're taking. So eating well, to stay active has a few different components to it. Of course, we want to take a food-first approach, and we really do want to focus in on some of those key nutrients that are so important for healthy, active aging. The calcium, vitamin D, protein, vitamin B12, iron and zinc, and then, of course, making sure we're getting fiber and enough water for our bodies to work properly. That being said, eating well-balanced meals, nutritious meals, doesn't necessarily have to be complicated. And we know too that prioritizing eating with people, having that social context and enjoying our food contributes not just to our physical health, but to our emotional and cognitive health as well. And then finally, there are a lot of different supplements out there. They might have a role in our health, depending on our own health conditions. But that nutritious diet needs to be that keystone, and supplements can't replace foods. So I hope you all learned a little bit, took away some tidbits for some healthy, active aging and healthy eating into our later years there. And I really appreciate everybody joining us. And I guess now we'll be ready for some questions if we have any.
One question that has come in here is person is saying, I have to force myself to eat breakfast. Is it true that breakfast is the most important meal? Is it really critical that I eat breakfast?
Oh, that's a great question. When it comes to breakfast, it is not necessarily the most important meal, but it can play a really important role in good nutrition. So we want to think about our overall pattern and our preferences for things. For example, for some people, they're just not hungry first thing in the morning, or the thought of food actually turns them off. But maybe a couple hours later, they're feeling ready to have something. That's totally reasonable. So breakfast doesn't need to be as soon as you jump out of bed. That's the first thing that you do. So the time, maybe thinking about the timing of breakfast can make a difference for you and can help you with that. As for whether or not you need to include breakfast, well, there's some health conditions that having that third meal, that first thing in the morning, can help you manage those health conditions better. So you might want to check in on that. But then looking at the rest of your day as well. So if you've never been a breakfast eater, but the rest of your day is well balanced and maybe you're having a snack later on, you're getting the nutrients that you need, breakfast may or may not be something that helps you. But if you're finding that you're not getting those nutrients in, you're missing out on food groups or things, trying to get that breakfast in is that extra opportunity to nourish yourself and to get that energy to support what you want to do through the day.
I have one other question here for you, Laura, and it's regarding protein. You mentioned the importance of protein. Is there an amount in terms of number of grams I should be reading on labels and things, or that I should be aiming for at each meal? Is that important?
Actually, yes, the amount of protein that you have at each meal can make a difference. So we know that getting a certain amount of protein at each meal can actually help get our muscles to rebuild and repair and build that strength better than not getting enough. Now, everybody's protein needs are going to be different, and it's based on our own body size, activity level, health conditions. There's a whole bunch of things. So I can't really give a blanket statement. But what I can say as a general rule of thumb is looking at your hand, actually. So look at the palm of your hand, and I'm talking about your hand. So everybody's palm is going to be a little bit different sized because we're all different. So a serving of protein about the size of the palm of your hand would be a really good starting place for a meal. So if you're eating something like meat, fish, or poultry, it would be about a piece about the size of the palm of your hand. If you're having something like eggs, it might be 2 eggs would be a good starting point. For some of your plant-based proteins like beans, 3/4 of a cup to a cup would be a really good serving size for that. So you can use your judgment and go from there, but using that palm of the hand portion size is a really good starting place for those meals. Now, for some meals, you might get enough protein when you combine all your different foods together as well. So the palm of the hand might not always work. If you're concerned about your protein intake, that would be a really good reason to chat with someone like myself, and we can go through your whole diet and see if over the course of the day, you're getting enough.
Well, thanks, Laura. I don't see any other questions coming through. So if you have any questions that weren't addressed today and something pops top of mind after you've uh, uh, turned off this webinar, please feel free to contact us as well and shoot us an email. So we really hope that you've enjoyed the session today and found it informative and enlightening and gained some greater knowledge in nutrition as we age. I know I've learned some new things here from Laura, so thank you for that. Just to let you know, our webinar has been recorded, so we will be sending you the link. So if you want to watch it again, or if you want to pass the link on to a friend who you think might enjoy the webinar, please feel free to do that, and we encourage you to do that as well. So thank you again for taking time out of your day and joining us today, and special thanks to Laura Creek Newman, our dietitian, for facilitating today's session as well. So we will be having upcoming webinars, so stay tuned for those, and we hope you can join us for those as well. Thanks, everybody, and have an enjoyable remainder of the day. Take care. Stop recording there. That was very good, Laura. Thanks. Yeah. I'm not sure. Oh, there it is. Stop recording. There. Oh, there. Stopped. I stopped it on here. Okay. Yeah, say stop recording. Yeah. There. Stop recording. And if you hit it again, and it will say restart, so it's stopped. Okay. So we're good. Great. That was good. Yeah, you covered everything.